Hi everyone, Mike Lambo here, and this is the instructional playthrough video for Battles of the English Civil War. So what I'm going to do today is run through a bit of an overview of the game, and then I'm going to play the first battle in the book, which is the Battle of Edge Hill. You can see I've got the charts and the map set out here. This is a printout, obviously, rather than the actual book, but I will do a flick through of the book very shortly, and I'll post that when it's done. So as I say, yeah, what I want to do is just give a quick overview. So this is, I say, Battles of the English Civil War. So this is part of a kind of mini series of battles books that that are part of my selection of games. So that I would include in that Battles of Normandy and Battles of Medieval Britain. So if you've played either of those, then this is kind of in the same style as those games, but it does have some significant differences. So the first thing to say about this game is it does have a moving artificial intelligence, so the enemy will move around on the map, so that's different to Battles of Medieval Britain. The scale is also similar to Battles of Medieval Britain, although slightly there are slightly more hexes on the map. There's one more column, for example. So that's the kind of scale you're talking about. The book itself contains 15 full battles, so it's the most comprehensive game that I've produced so far in terms of content. That has made the book slightly thicker, and therefore it has meant that I've had to put the price up just a little, but I hope you still appreciate that I'm trying to keep these as low as possible, and that they still, I think this one still is very good value for money, as considering you're getting 15 individually designed battles, each with their own units and terrain and so on, each one having to be obviously play tested and balanced and so on and so forth. There's a lot of work involved. So I hope that's okay with you guys. So 15 full battles. In terms of units, generally I've set out the units ready to go on this battle here. So we're talking here about, of course, about cannons and cavalry, musketeer units, so units with armed with muskets, and pike units as well. This is the old sort of pike and shot era, 17th century. Yes, there are cannons and muskets, but they tended to be fairly basic, still in the early days of that kind of weaponry, and not terribly reliable or accurate. And that hopefully I've reflected that in sort of how powerful they are in the game. In the most of the information you need to play the game, as ever, is in these charts on the left-hand page. So this is how it'll look when you open the game book. The charts on the left page and the map on the right, and the book will lay, obviously not quite as flat as I've got this, two pieces of paper laying on the desk, but it will lay nice and flat as ever. Just bend the spine back, be rough with it, it can take it, and it will lay flat. If necessary, just clip it to a hardback book or something like that, or of course you can copy the maps if you so wish. So information over here. So in terms of the units themselves, you can see there's a move statistic and a range statistic. So musketeers move 1, pikemen move 1, cannons move 1, cavalry move 2 hexes, so slightly quicker. In terms of range, pikemen and cavalry have a range of 1, musketeers 3, and cannons have a range of 8, which is actually effectively an unlimited range. So for example, if a cannon was here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 would take it off the map. So it's an unlimited range effectively. So musket range wasn't terribly good on these early muskets, probably a couple hundred yards or so. Beyond that, it's getting pretty difficult to hit anything. And in terms of cavalry, really armed with swords, I guess still lances knocking around and stuff. Maybe pistols as a tactic in those days, kind of riding a load of cavalry up to to an enemy unit and taking a pot shot with a load of pistols and riding off again. But still, the range there is fairly small, so I've kept the range of cavalry at just 1, so they need to be adjacent to enemy units to attack. And then we've got all the to hit values here. So as I've done before, it's 2 dice here. and you have to reach this number on your 2 dice to hit the rest units. But the to hit value does vary depending which unit you are attacking with compared to the unit you are attacking. So you just need to check that chart. It makes fairly good sense, and it's a chart that soon becomes fixed in the mind once you've played the game a couple of times or so. Other, some other key rules set out on here. There's the effects of terrain features down here. So if the attacker is on higher ground, which is symbolized by these hexes here, these higher ground hexes, then they get a -1 bonus to hit. So they need to, roll one less than normal. If the defender is in the trees, then you have to roll 1 higher to hit them. So the hills are the higher ground is an attacking piece of terrain, whereas trees are a defending or defense piece of terrain. If you attack directly through trees, in other words, along a row of hexes with where there is a tree between you and the enemy directly, then it's a +1 to hit as well. Then we've got the support bonus, so any other unit that can also attack helps you out and gives you a -1 to hit, which is a feature I've used before in some of my games. And if a defending unit is demoralized, then again we take 1 off the to hit value. And morale plays quite a big part in this game. I wanted to, when I started designing battles of the English Civil War, I sort of sat down and thought, what are the key features? And obviously the battlefields and the units are all key features of that period, but also the idea of morale plays a huge part in these battles. Often the soldiers were fairly inexperienced. They were sort of recruited for the purpose, conscripted almost, if you prefer. Didn't necessarily have really strong beliefs in either side involved in the war, and fighting perhaps some distance from home and so on. As soon as things started to turn badly, then units tended to flee the battlefield fairly quickly, even change allegiances, and all kinds of other nonsense going on there. So I've tried to reflect that morale factor, and we'll see how that works once we get moving. There are orders involved again. So up here on the player chart, we can see that a 1, 2, 3 is a move, a 4, 5, 6 is an attack, and a 6 also rallies a demoralized unit as well. So really basic orders there. What I have done this time though is introduce something called the leadership ability, which helps to mitigate your initial roll when deciding what your units can do. So again, we'll see that in operation, but there is a way to do that, because I know it can lead to some frustration when you're trying to, you desperately need an attack and you roll 3 moves or whatever it might have been in previous games. Well, this game you have a chance to mitigate that. Won't always work for you, but at least it gives you that, that feeling of more control than maybe some of my other games had. So that's there as well. We'll have a look at that when we get to it. Okay, anything else to talk about to start with? I don't think so. I think that'll probably do. Let's crack on, shall we? So the first thing to do then is to set up the battlefield. So we're doing the first battle in the book. They do get more tricky as you go along, but we're straight into it at battle 1. This is not an easy battle, particularly perhaps first couple of tries when you're getting used to the tactics required and so on, the game system and so on. Once you've mastered that, you should be able to win this most times, which I'm going to be brave and say I can win this most times I play it now. Setting myself up for a defeat, no doubt, but let's see how that goes. I say there are 15 in the book, and yes, the last few are particularly tricky, but generally, I can't promise it gradually gets harder. It's kind of meant to, but it's not always that easy to balance it exactly in that way. But as ever with my games, it's not a walk in the park. Okay, so we're going to set up this first battle, and it says here the player. In fact, let's just read the flavour text, shall we? It says King Charles I and his royalist army met the Earl of Essex in the first major conflict of the First English Civil War. Neither army was particularly experienced or well equipped, and the battle was inconclusive as many men fled the battlefield. Okay, so, many of these battles didn't really have a clear outcome. Sort of usually a bit of cannon fire, a bit of skirmishing, maybe the odd cavalry charge, and then kind of an all-in battle, and then pretty quickly, day or so, people were fleeing the battlefield and disappearing, and it was always difficult. Both sides kind of claiming a victory. It's that sort of thing going on. Some were clearer than others, but I've tried to give a bit of flavour text for each battle because I know people like that historical context, and I've given a bit more background to the Civil War itself in the in the first part of the book. Just have a quick read of as well. Not a lot, but just enough to put it into context for you if you're not familiar with it. All right, so it says here then that I am the parliamentarians on this on this battle. That will change, but the player is always the red player. This game does come, I should have said, this game does come with this counter sheet at the back, and I've made those up and put them here. In fact, what I've done with these is mounted them onto just cardboard, from a cardboard box. So you probably see the corrugated bit facing you there, perhaps. Yeah, and I think that works fairly well actually. What it does do is mean they really kind of sit nice and proud from the game. You can pick them up really easily and move them around, and the corners actually come out remarkably well because of course the card is actually quite thin on the top, but the corrugated bit gives you a nice thick counter there. So the sheet comes, it's the last page in the book. Again, you can remove that, cut them out, stick them onto card. I know people do all kinds of things, and it's totally up to you what you do, but these counters serve their purpose pretty well. They're generally sort of two-tone, nice and clear graphics. So again, you probably can't see because I'm probably shadowing that somehow, but that would be a cavalry unit. Okay, so let's get set up. So we set up, it says player sets up first, place each unit on a hex with a black triangle. And I'm free to choose. I've got lots of black triangles here. I've got 7 units, and there are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hexes, starting hexes there. One thing to note about cannon units is they operate on the back row only. For me, this very bottom row of hexes here, so they can only move like that. Okay, they will never kind of advance or anything. And the same with the AI, their cannon will operate across this back row, okay, which gives them a slight advantage here because they've got the higher ground, but that won't always be the case, don't worry. On the other hand, I've got a couple of tree hexes, of course, which are quite useful for defense. So what I'm going to do, I think, because I don't want to lose my cannon early, I'm going to stick my cannon in this tree line at the back here. Then what I'm going to do is just put 1 cavalry on the flank over there. I'm going to put a pike unit with a musketeer unit, and then similarly on this flank I'm going to put a same kind of arrangement. I think I'll put my muskets in the trees and pike and cavalry there in that way. Okay, don't always do that, but just what I'm going to do at the moment. Obviously, without the AI being on the board, it's tricky to kind of make too much sense to this, but I do get to go first, so that does give me a chance just to rearrange in the first turn if I need to, my units. Also, of course, I know how the AI sets up because I can look on here and see how that works. So for example, let's have a look at the cavalry, and the AI here has 2 cavalry units, and it does say there, it says set up 2 cavalry units, or it says set up 2, which means 2 cavalry units. And it says D6 plus 18, so they will set up on the hexes that relate to a roll of D6 plus 18. So they'll be setting up on the higher numbered hexes, sort of 19 to sort of 24. And you can see there's 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So in this scenario, their cavalry are going to be on the flanks. And I know, because I wrote the AI, so they're likely to charge. They won't always, but they may well try and do some early charging. I just need to be careful. Pikes are particularly good against cavalry, so I'm keeping those there. Muskets are particularly bad against cavalry charges, and therefore I'm keeping them back slightly. So one of the big elements of this game is this kind of rock, paper, scissors element to it. Pikes are great against cavalry. Cavalry are great against muskets. Muskets are pretty good against pikes, and so on. Cannons sort of shooting all over the place. But one of the big things is just making sure your muskets don't get charged by cavalry, because that is a 6+ to hit, and you don't want that happening because that's almost certainly going to be a success. So I'm going to set up like that, and then we're going to set up the AI. You do that following down the order of the AI chart. So start with the cannons. They got 1. It says set up 1, and it says D6. So you just roll a D6. It's a 2. We take their cannon and we place it on hex number 2. Simple as that. Okay, could have been any of those 6 hexes along the back row in the middle there. They're starting there now, which is, I like it when they don't start in line with my own cannon, which they're not. Although I am protected by these pikes to some degree. But yeah, it would have been nice had it been in the middle, because that would have given me a bit of leeway from them. So immediately I know this musket is under threat, because what cannons do is they only attack down their column of hexes. Okay, now the reason that they're quite restricted is they're restricted by, as I say, movement along the top or bottom of the map, and also shooting only down their column. I know that's not realistic. I'm fully aware that cannons could pivot and shoot over this direction or whatever, but as I say, they weren't particularly great in those days. This is still some time, a long time before even, say, the American Civil War or Napoleon even. So, we're talking about cannons in their early iterations, and they weren't reliable or accurate, and they were there almost for effect. They were more a kind of morale defeating weapon rather than something that's really going to kill thousands of men on the battlefield. Anyway, so their cannon starts there. We move to their cavalry. Say there's 2 of them, and it gets D6 plus 18, so they're going to go with 2, which is 20. Just pop that in there. And then a 5, which is 23, so they're going over there. So in fact, they've started 1 on each flank as well, just like me. Again, they won't always do that. They could just have easily started 1, a couple over here and a couple over here, but this time they're split. Musketeers, they've got 3, and they set up with 2d6, so we're going to roll that. We've got a 4 there, so let's pop them on 4, and a 10 goes there. Obviously, if you roll something that's already occupied, you just re-roll, and a 5 goes there. So their 3 musket units are on there, and then their pikemen set up with 3 dice, 3d6. So we're going to go again. We've got 7 for them. Oops. That's not the pikeman unit yet, don't need him yet. 7 goes on there, and we've got a 9, is that still free? Yes it is, goes there. And then we've got an 8, okay, so fairly high up. The pikemen usually starting slightly further down than that, but they're still generally in front. That's that's the tactic I wanted the AI to sort of get. Looking at that, that's not too far off how historically many of these armies would have set up, with pikes either intermingled with or slightly in front of muskets. To be fair, usually intermingled with them, but I've split them out into 2 separate units because it's better for gameplay. Cavalry often on the flanks, as I'm sure you're aware, trying to get around the side and back of enemies and so on, but sometimes in the middle, at the back as well. I'm sure we'll see that from time to time in some of these battles. And cannons usually, back there somewhere, firing away. So that's their setup. There's sense to it. It will be different every time, but the AI will usually try to have some kind of sense to their setup. That's setup. Okay, so usually, it took me a few minutes, didn't it? It'll take you probably a minute. It's dead easy. And we're ready to go. Oh, turn tracker, I should say. There's a turn counter is on turn 1, and we're ready to move away. Let's look at the win condition. So down here again, to win, it says remove or demoralize all enemy units before the time runs out. Okay, that's not the case for every battle, but most of them you have to win it by clearing the battlefield or demoralizing all of those units that are left. So if you manage to clear them all but there are 2 left but they're both demoralized, then you've won, and you win as soon as you achieve that objective. So that's the win condition. Other win conditions are killing the leader of the opposition. I think there's only 1 battle that does that, and there's a couple where you have to get one of your units off the top of the map, which is more difficult than it seems, actually, than it sounds. But that's because those 2 battles in particular were about, I think it's royalists in both cases. It might be one of each, actually. Trying to push through the enemy and make progress to a certain place, or even get out of a sticky situation and get away. So that's why those are different. They're reflecting again the historical situation. Good. Okay, so we're going to start, and I'll carry on explaining the rules as we go through. So I go first. So we go in the order of the charts on here. So I'm my chart first, and the AI So I start now. What we do is take 1d6 for each unit remaining in my army. Okay, so I've got 7 to start with. Okay, so I take 7 d6. Now I think the biggest army the player has is 8. So the most d6 you'll need is 8. It's handy just to have an extra one laying around. I'll show you why in a minute. But I need 7 to start with. Okay, so I take my 7d6, give them a good shake, away they go. Okay, and what I'm going to do is just move them down here just for clarity. Okay, so we've got 3 1s, we've got a 3, we've got 2 4s, we've got a 5. Okay, remember going back to the orders chart, 1 2 3 is move, so I've got 4 moves. 4 5 6 is attack. I've got 3 attacks. All right, now at the moment my forces are quite far away from the enemy. The musketeers have a range of 3. Okay, 1 2 3 1 2 3, so they can sort of shoot to here, but they can't reach. My cannon can reach and has a unit in the same column, so that is worth allocating an attack die to. Right. However, I don't need these 2 attack dice. Now this is just one example, it's the first turn, but this is going to happen throughout your, you're not always going to roll what you want. You might be desperate, there might be 2 or 3 units you've charged into the enemy and you desperately need them to get attack rolls, on your next turn. And you don't roll any, you've rolled all move dice. So I thought there needs to be some way to mitigate that. So this idea of a leadership ability is basically your chance to mitigate the roll. So what you're allowed to do then is you're allowed to roll at least 2 dice of the same number. You can re-roll them. Okay, so for example here I could roll 2 1s, I could re-roll 3 1s, or I could re-roll the 2 4s. I can't roll both the 4s and the 1s. I can't re-roll the 3 because it's on its own. I can't roll 1 1 or 1 4 because it's got to be at least 2. All right, see how that works? So first of all, you need to have some matching dice. Now when you're rolling 7 dice, you'll always have a matching dice, obviously. At least 2 of them will match. It's impossible not to. And even when you're rolling 4 or 5, if you roll 5 dice and they're all moves and you wanted attacks, then some of those dice will be matching again, because obviously a move is only 1 2 and 3. So if you roll 5 dice, the worst you could have is sort of 1 1 2 2 and a 3. So you've got at least 2 that'll be matching again. So invariably you'll have a chance to re-roll. Not always. Sometimes you'll roll 4 dice and you'll get 1 2 3 4, and you wanted 2 attacks and you've only got 1, and there's no scope for re-rolling. But that becomes more of a problem later in the game. So that's another reason to look after your units, because the more dice you roll, the more chance you have to mitigate. So that's what I've rolled. What I was saying is I don't really need these 2 attacks. So what I'm going to do is re-roll those 2 attacks in the hope that I might get some move orders. I might re-roll them and get 2 attack orders, but at least I've had the chance to do so. So I've rolled them and I've actually come up with 2 move orders. So now I've got 6 moves and 1 attack. That's it. You can only do it once. Even though I've now got lots of dice the same, I can't re-roll anymore. Obviously with re-rolls you always have to keep the re-roll, don't you? You have to keep the re-roll. You can't go back to the original. I've got 6 moves, which is what I wanted. So then I'm just going to allocate those. So this is one part of this game slightly different to other games. You have to allocate your dice before you do anything else. You can't sort of have an attack with 1 and think, oh, because that worked, I'll move with this. You've got to do that now. And this is again trying to reflect something from this period, which is the difficulty of the leaders of these armies trying to convey their orders. So we've already got a slight sort of fog of war, if you like, by not always rolling exactly what you want. But we've also got this idea that you have to kind of allocate straight away. You can generally say, you do this, you do that, and you do the others. Now go. You can't sort of sit there, at the back of a battlefield of, thousands of men spread over, certainly hundreds, if not, even a mile or 2. Trying to say, hang on, they're winning over there, so you do something different, and then you just can't do that. So this is just to reflect the fact that you have to allocate. You've got to make those decisions at this stage. Okay, so just allocate those dice to start with. You can do that however you're comfortable with. You can even put them right on top of it if you prefer for neatness. But I've not found it a problem. I can usually fit them in fairly clearly as to which is which. And then often you can actually remove some dice fairly quickly. So for example, you might have to allocate attack dice to units that can't attack, so then you can just remove those straight away. That's what we've got now. So what I'm going to do first then, I'm going to shuffle this cavalry unit up, but not too far, because I've learnt that being cautious is always good. I'm going to move this pike unit across here, because I'm slightly nervous about this cavalry and this musket, and I want that to be protected. I'm not going to move the musket anyway, so I can get rid of that. I mean, I could have allocated an attack dice, but yeah, I wanted to re-roll just to kind of show you how that works. Plus, you know, I'm probably going to move most of these. I'm going to move this pike unit up to have one eye on him, and similarly, this cavalry unit is going to go up there, and I am going to move this musket up because he feels fairly protected by this guy already, this pike. So I'm going to do that. Okay, so that just leaves me with this attack dice for the cannon. Remember, the cannon can only shoot down its own column, and there's actually one more restriction on cannons as well, is that they must always attack the nearest unit to them. Okay, so there's never any choice for a cannon. If you want to attack with it, you go down its column until you find an enemy unit, and it has to attack that first unit. Same with the AI. Okay, I should have said this as well. The AI plays by exactly the same rules as you do. Right? So if it beats you, then you know you need to think carefully about that. Obviously, it has more units than you. The other thing is, of course, is you have to achieve the objective, whereas the AI just has to stop you, which is always easier, isn't it? But the AI, yes, plays by the same rules. So, the units move in the same, have the same movement, same range. They get all the same terrain bonuses and detriments, and so on and so forth. All right, it's exactly the same rules. So this kind of issue has to fire, has to attack this rifle here. So we look on the chart here. We have cannons on, sorry, not rifles, muskets. We have cannons on muskets. That's an 8+. Okay, so the basic to hit would be an 8. Right? He's on higher ground, but remember, higher ground in this game is just an attack bonus and not a defense bonus. Okay, not a defense bonus. So it's still an 8+. He's in the trees, but that's a defense bonus and not an attack bonus. Okay, so he doesn't get, that doesn't affect him either. The other way around, it would be completely different. He'd get a bonus for attacking, he'd get a bonus for defending. So it's still an 8+. Nothing blocks line of sight in this game. Friendly, enemy, trees, nothing. Okay, it doesn't block line of sight. So that doesn't affect anything. Although if there is a tree hex directly in line, so if there was a tree hex on one of these hexes here, that would add 1 to the attack value required, but there isn't. There's no trees under there. There's no trees in there. So we're looking at a basic 8+ to hit. So here I go, and I've got a 5. Yeah, 5. So I've missed. I missed. No effect. Okay, no effect. And that's the end of my turn. That's the end of my turn. So fairly light turn. I managed to push my forces forward. You've seen that that's given me a chance to rearrange slightly at the back here. In readiness. Now I know what their army looks like and where it is. I can now sort of start praying. Had those cavalry both been on one side, I might have moved this pike unit 1 hex towards this way. It'll change depending on what happens. So now we turn to the AI turn, and we work through this chart in this order. So we activate all cannons, then all cavalry, then all musketeers, then all pikemen. Okay, it says here, activate unit types in the order shown below, in order below, then bottom to top of map, then left to right. Okay, so for example, when it comes to cavalry, they are on the same level. So usually we would have, had he been there, we would do that one first and then that one. Because they're exactly on the same level, we would do left to right. Okay, we'll see how that works as we go through. But first of all, we need to do their cannon. So their cannon is up here. So remember, have a look at the instructions. The cannon never rolls a die for the AI. It simply works through these 3 commands. They're very simple. And again, you will soon be doing this without looking at this chart very often at all. The odd cursory glance now and again. And cannons are particularly straightforward because they do the same every time. So firstly, it will always try to attack the nearest unit in the same column. Okay, so just like players, if it wants to attack, it will do that. Obviously, a player doesn't have to attack, they can move their cannons, but the AI will always attack if it can. So it will attack this musketeer unit. Okay, and we'll come back to the rest of those instructions as and when we need them. It's going to do that. Remember, cannons on muskets, basic 8+ to hit. However, this cannon is on higher ground, which would reduce the to hit value to 7+. Okay, so reduced by 1. Attacker on higher ground than target, -1. So he would now need a 7+ to hit this musket unit. However, he is shooting directly through these trees. These trees are on the same line of hexes. Okay, that can apply that way as well for other units, but for cannons it's always up and down. So if there is a tree hex, it will always be in that direct line of hexes, which adds 1. Okay, for attacking directly through trees, +1. So that takes it back to 8+. So the cannon needs 8+ to hit the musket. So let's roll for that. And they've got a 7, so they missed as well. It's only fair, isn't it? We both missed that initial cannon shot. And I'm guessing that's probably a fairly historically accurate summary of what happened at the start of Edge Hill. Then we go down to the cavalry. So this cavalry is going to go first, as I say, because they're both the same distance down the map. So we're going to start with the left-hand side, and we're going to start with the cavalry. And again, they have a couple of mandatory orders, so orders that you have to try and do first before you then get to the dice rolling elements here where the numbers are. So the first instruction for cavalry is attack an adjacent unit, preferring muskets, then cannons, then cavalry, then pike, and then end their turn. That means they end their turn if they can do that. He can't attack because there is no adjacent unit. Remember, his range is 1, so there is no adjacent unit. If he can't do that, then it says move adjacent to, and therefore charge attack the nearest musket, cannon, cavalry, but not pike this time, then end. So what's saying is, remember, he can move 2 hexes. So the question there is, can he move 2 hexes and therefore, or thereby, be adjacent to another one of my units? The answer is no. There would have to be a unit somewhere on this line of hexes here for him to do that. So he can't do that either. So we don't need to worry about that just yet. Okay, and we'll worry about what we mean by charge attack when we do that. 3. So now the next line has a number on it. It says 3 to 4, and then it says 5 to 6. So now we know we have to roll a die at that point. So we take the d6 and we roll it. There is no 1 to 2. So if we get a 1 or 2, this cavalry unit will do nothing this turn, and its activation will finish. Okay, so we're going to roll that. We get a 4. We get a 4. So we look at 3 to 4. It says, remember this guy, move 2 hexes towards the nearest musket. Now we stop there. Okay, we're not all we're doing at the moment is asking the question: is there a musket on the map? And the answer is yes. Here there is a musket unit, and it's there, and that's the nearest. There's one there as well, but that's clearly the nearest one to this cavalry unit. Okay, so as soon as we know that there is a unit on the map, we don't have to worry about cavalry, cannons, or pikes because we've found a musket. All we've got to do now is find the nearest musket, and that's this one. But at the end of that sentence, it does say, so moving 2 hexes towards it, it says favouring vertical moves. Again, you'll see that the next line, for example, says favouring horizontal moves. And for the pike, they're horizontal moves, and same for the musketeers. So what is a vertical move and what is a horizontal move? Okay, well, the answer to that question, let me just borrow a unit for a second. A vertical move is simply that. Okay, a vertical move means moving up and down the column in which the unit is currently placed. Okay, a horizontal move means moving to a new column, one side or the other of where the unit is currently placed. Right, now, I appreciate, because of the design of hexes, when you move horizontally, you are also moving to an extent vertically, because you are changing your, I don't know, latitude or longitude, what it might be. You're sort of moving vertically, but you get the point. Yeah, vertically means in this game means up and down the column. Horizontally means moving across columns. All right, let's put that one back before I give the AI an unfair advantage. So this cavalry is heading towards this musket, but it prefers vertical moves in this case. So it will go there on its first move. Okay, you always do the moves separately. The first move once, and then you consider the second move, still towards the same unit, but you consider again, still vertically, goes there, ends up in those trees, not ideal for us because he's in the trees, but also it's okay. We kind of expected him to charge, and we've got a pike unit waiting for him when he gets here. All right. The important point to note here is that the AI will only ever move towards a unit if it can move so that it closes the gap between them. Right? It won't move and maintain the same distance. It simply won't move. Okay, so for example, let's borrow a couple of units again. Okay. In fact, I'm going to put them upside down to remind me they don't belong in this game. Let's say they were set up like that. It's probably unlikely, but let's say they were probably impossible on this map yet. Let's just say at some point in the game, because units do get trapped behind other units, if he was there and he was told to move 2 units towards the nearest musketeer, you would still do that first bit. You still find the nearest musketeer, which is that one. And if there is a musketeer on the map, you never change the target unit. He'll always want to move towards that musket. But in this case, he can't get there because he can't move nearer to it. There's no need to, even if this was an open path, you wouldn't say, oh, I'll go this way because he could get around here, or, do this or do that. Both of his moves, or certainly each move in turn, has to be moved towards this target unit. So he will only move if either that hex or that hex are clear. Okay. Similarly, if we had units here, he would take the first move, which would be a vertical move because he prefers vertical moves, and then he wouldn't be able to move nearer, so he would stop and his turn would end. So he would do one move if necessary. Assuming he was like that, he wouldn't be able to move. His activation would just end, and that would be it. We move on to the next unit. We wouldn't then start thinking, oh, well, hang on, is there another unit he can move to? What about the other musketeer? What about pikes? What about this? What about that? Don't do that. Okay, we find the first unit that he prefers. If there is one on the board, we find the nearest one, and then decide whether he can move or not. And if he can't, it's the end of the activation. Similarly, if the setup was like that, and he wanted to move towards this unit, preferring vertical moves, he can't move vertically there because there's a unit in the way, and you cannot move onto the same hex as another unit ever, not even to pass through. Okay, these are huge units, thousands of men. Well, they're too compact. It's too, also for gameplay purposes, of course. But what he would do in that case is he would move to there on his first move and then come vertically down. Okay, yes, he prefers vertical moves, but that doesn't mean he won't move horizontally as long as it's moving towards the musket. So he will move that way on his first move. Then on his second move, and we start again, he's still moving towards that one, but you reassess, and now he can move vertically as he prefers. He would go down there. See how that works? Again, it's taken me ages to explain that, but it's really quite simple. So he's going to move 2 hexes towards him, preferring vertically. He'll go there, then there. You don't take into account terrain, other units, or anything. I don't want any players to be, I never want players in my games to be in a position where they have to think for the AI. Not because you can't, of course, but because, certainly I prefer playing against AI where the AI does what the AI does. And I don't want to have to influence that in any shape or form. Now and again, they'll do a move where you think, was that the best? But to be honest, not that often. And usually there are so many factors at play anyway that what might be considered a bad move could actually easily turn into a good move when on the next turn they crush a unit of yours or something that you thought was going to crush them first. So it's just not that important, but it's important for the balancing of the maps that we get the operation of this AI correct. So he goes out, just follow the instructions on here, and obviously the rules are more detailed in the book itself, in the instructions, so you can you'll have read those. There'll be examples in there to look at and so on and refer back to. But it is really quite simple. I'm sure by the end of this playthrough you'll get the idea. I won't explain it in that much detail again, I promise. So let's do the other cavalry. Again, he can't attack adjacent, he can't move adjacent to anyone, so that's those two. Then we throw a die. He's also got a 4, so he will also move 2 hexes towards the nearest musket. For him, that's, hang on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, for him, it's that one. Again, he prefers vertical moves, but in fact, vertically is the only way of moving nearer to that musket anyway, isn't it? So even if he preferred horizontal, he wouldn't move there because that's the same distance. That hex there is the same distance away as that hex there, believe it or not. So he's going to move straight down here, go 1, 2, straight down. Okay, so they're charging, in the most aggressive way possible, straight at us, and we've got to deal with that. Unfortunately, our pikes are ready, and hopefully we'll be able to deter that charge. Then we move on to their musketeers. So again, we start with the ones further down. So let's do this middle musketeer first. So he again will try to attack he will try to attack the nearest unit in range. Remember, the range is 3. He clearly can't reach anyone at the moment, so you can't do that. Then we just roll a die for the musketeer, nice and easy. So can they attack? No, straight into rolling a die. 1 to 3, they won't do anything. Oh, hang on, I'm looking at the wrong unit, sorry. That's the musketeer, believe it or not, with a musket on it, isn't it, Mike? Silly fool. Right, so 1, 2, 3, still can't attack, so we're going to roll a die for him. If he gets a 1, 2, 3, stays where he is. He's got a 4. So we look at this, it says move 1 hex towards the nearest unit, favouring horizontal moves. Move 1 hex towards the nearest unit, favouring horizontal moves. So all we do is find the nearest unit. Doesn't matter what it is, just find that nearest unit. And that's this unit here, okay, isn't it? And he's got to move towards it. He prefers horizontal moves, so he'd much rather move there or there, but that isn't going to get him closer to that unit. So he has to move there. Okay, he has to move there, all right? Which actually isn't a bad move, because it puts my pike in range, and he's still not in range of anything from me. This musket next, because it's the next furthest down. So again, we roll for him because he can't attack anyone. He gets a 5, so he'll try and move towards the nearest unit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This time he's got 2. He's got 2 units, these 2. In fact, he's going to move the same whichever, but just for the completeness, what you should always do, certainly when you're starting out with the AI instructions, is you should always decide which unit first. That's the key thing in this game, okay? Like we did for the cavalry and everything, always identify the exact individual unit that they are moving towards, and then sort out the movement. Okay, so we would choose randomly between these two. Muskets have no preference on their move section. They do when they're attacking, but not when they're moving. So therefore, in terms of the unit they're going to move to, I should say, and therefore we're going to choose the unit first. So I usually just go like, odd even. I've rolled an odd number, so that's the pike. And then the musket will move nearer to the pike, but he prefers horizontal moves, so he will move that way, which takes it nearer to the pike, okay, rather than vertically, even though that also takes him nearer. And then the final musket at the back there gets a 3, which means he doesn't do anything. He'll stay where he is. Then we'd quickly move on to pikes. Again, start with the one at the front here. Pikes do have a couple of mandatory instructions. First of all, they'll attack someone who's adjacent. And secondly, which you can't do that, they'll try to move adjacent to somebody like the cavalry do. Remember, they only move 1 hex, so they can't do that either because there's no unit to move adjacent to. Then we roll a die. He gets a 1, which is a nothing for a pike. Looking for a 3 or 4 or a 5 to 6, 3 to 4 or 5 to 6. 1 to 2 is nothing, so he does nothing. This guy will need a die roll. He gets a 6. It says move 1 hex towards the nearest pike. So remember, the first question is there a pike on the board? Yes, there is. Where's the nearest one to him? It's that one, isn't it? Obviously, yeah, it's that one. He will move nearer to this pike. He prefers or favours horizontal moves. So he will move there. Okay, not there, there, because he prefers to move horizontally, and that still takes him nearer. Yeah, he was 5 hexes away, he's now 4 hexes away. Still takes him nearer. Finally, the pike over on the right there gets a 3. So he moves 1 hex towards the nearest cavalry unit. That's this one over here. And again, he prefers to move horizontally, so he will move that way. Okay, he'll move that way. All right. And that is the end of the AI turn, which usually takes about a minute, I would say, in the early stages when they've got quite a few units on the board. Once you get used to it, yeah, a minute or 2 and it's done. And then you can come back to your own thinking. So we move the turn tracker on. It's turn 2. Right, so nothing's on. So what I personally like about this game is that you're into the action pretty quick. We've had 1 turn each and already you can see units are beginning to meet. And that, is the case in all the battles. There's no sort of, hiking up the map for 3 or 4 turns before you get the action. You're straight in there, and you're going to need all these actions. There are 10 turns in this game, so a little bit meatier than some of my others, perhaps. So you've got plenty of time, but there's a lot to do. We're trying to clear all these units, so we've got to, again, we've got to balance that being safe and looking after my units against that need to get things done. And these quite often go down to the last sort of 2 or 3, turn or 2, 3 turns, whatever. So it's not usually something that's dealt with in a few turns. So I've got 7 units, remember. So again, I'm going to roll the 7 dice, and I'm going to pull them out here. And this time I've got 4 move in, orders and 3 attack orders, and you can see again I've got some flexibility. I could re-roll the 2 1s, or I could re-roll the 2 6s. So I could try and make more attacks. I can try and make more moves depending on what I want. So let's have a look. This time, what I'm going to want to do is run my pikes into the cavalry and probably have a backup shot at least with the muskets because they're in range of the cavalry. Probably fire my cannon again because I can, and therefore put a couple of moves on the cavalry, and that, to be honest, works out pretty well. Don't feel any need to mitigate that in any way. So let's see how that works. So I'm going to start over here because it's a slightly less complicated flank. I could push this pike into the cavalry. Now pikes were good against cavalry, so we get a bit of a, what's really happening, of course, I guess, thematically the cavalry are charging, the pikes are kind of just bracing themselves and maybe moving about ever so slightly, just getting in a prime position to intercept them as they charge in towards the muskets. Or you could say the cavalry are kind of having a rest, mulling around, not really doing anything, and the pikes see them and go for a charge into them. Either way, we're going to move that up to there. If I do, we've got pikemen on cavalry is a 7+. Okay, now this is a move order, of course. What am I talking about? This is a move order. Well, when you move adjacent to a unit, then you get what I've called a bonus charge attack. That doesn't apply to cannons. It's pretty easy to remember, isn't it? Because cannons don't charge, do they? Okay, if musketeers do, get the old bayonets on and off you go. Pikes do, and certainly cavalry do. So he's going to charge into him. If he does, he'll get a standard attack, but it's called a bonus attack. Don't need an order for it. Don't have to do it. And there are situations where you may choose not to do it. And again, we'll see. I might remember to explain it, but if not, you'll soon work it out for yourselves. I want to tell you all the possible tactics for this game because there are a lot. And it's taken me a little while to fathom them all out and make sure they all work properly and relate to each other well and so on. So this guy could move here. If he does, he gets a bonus charge attack. That's a 7+ on this cavalry. Remember, I talked about supporting. We said here that you get, for each unit that could attack the target unit, get a -1 support. Well, this musketeer has the cavalry in range. That's all that matters. He's in range, and therefore he could attack him. And therefore, even if he didn't have an attacker, this is not to do with his order. It doesn't matter about that. He could have already done his. He could have moved. He could have done anything. All that matters is he is in range and therefore can provide support. So rather than 7+, this would become a 6+, which is pretty good, isn't it? The other decision I've got to make is this cavalry. I could move him up first. Okay, let's put this pike back. I could move this cavalry unit up here. Okay, if I do, he could charge attack this cavalry unit. He would be attacking on an 8+. Okay, cavalry on cavalry is an 8+. In fact, all units when attacking themselves, it's an 8+ standard. If he does that, it's an 8+. He would still get support from the muskets. That would be a 7+. So not as good as a pike attack, and that matters, particularly in this game, and we'll see why in a minute. Okay, so what I might decide to do is advance this cavalry. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain it to you. I'm going to advance this cavalry and I'm going to choose not to charge attack. Don't have to. Okay, so in other words, all I'm doing is moving him there. Right, but I've opted not to do a bonus charge attack. The AI will always do the bonus charge attack. You never have to think about that. They will always do it if they can. But I'm going to decide not to do it because it's optional. Okay. Now, why is that? Well, the reason is I'm then going to charge with my pike unit with their move order, and with them I am going to do the bonus charge attack, which means I am now attacking on a 7+, with a bonus here taking it down to 6+, but also another bonus here, because the cavalry can also attack. Remember, they're in a position to attack, so they also get a support -1, taking it down to 5+ to hit. So I put myself in the best position, arguably, to attack this. Now, I know you're still thinking, oh, hang on, you could have attacked with the cavalry, then if you missed, you could have attacked with a pike. But this is where the next bit comes in. Okay, when you attack, you roll 2d6. Okay, so it's a 5+. So I'm going to roll 2d6 for my attack. And I've got an 11. Okay, I've got an 11, which is obviously a fantastic result. Okay, so what happens when you attack? When you hit an enemy unit, in other words, when you achieve the number rolled, which I've done here, remember I needed a 5, I've got an 11, the unit you attack becomes demoralized, okay, first and foremost. So we replace, if you're using the counters, the unit with this demoralized unit, cavalry unit. Okay, and it's got a big black arrow on it to remind you that demoralized units generally flee the battlefield back to their own end. And then it will flee by the number by which you exceeded the required hit value. So I needed a 5, but I got an 11, and therefore this unit will recede, or retreat I should say, flee if you prefer, by 6 hexes. 1, 2, 3, 4, it's gone. It's gone. Okay, so he goes and he will leave the battlefield. He'd routed, in other words. Okay. Now, that's important because, all right, I was lucky and I got 11. The chances of that were pretty slim. Let's say I'd have got the standard roll on a die, which is 7, isn't it? You know, the most common roll. So I'd rolled a 7. It still would have been a hit, of course, wouldn't it? He would have still been demoralized, but I needed a 5, I got a 7. So I've got 2 more. So what happens then is he would go 1, 2, and he would stay there. Okay, he would stay there. And when it came to his turn, he would have a chance to rally that unit. And if he fails, it would then flee another 2 hexes, which in that case would take him off the board. But if it didn't, he would then, you know, stay another turn, try and rally again. If he didn't, he would flee again. So you see how that works. So it's important not just to hit units, but to hit them as hard as you can, because the harder you hit them, the further they retreat, and because their morale takes them back. Okay. So we don't really, you know, if I'd have run up with my cavalry and hit him, but because it was an 8+, it wasn't, you know, I got a 9, it takes him there. Whereas getting the best attack possible means you push him back as far as you can. Okay, we've nudged him off the board. I like to put my removed units next to the board like that in a kind of chess way. I know. That's all them done. My muskets then were kind of waiting in reserve to have, you know, if they were needed. You know, if I'd missed, then my muskets could have had a pop. They can't do that now. They can't shoot him on, so he's not needed. So I can't use that attack order. Now over here, I'm going to do a similar thing, but I've got to think a little bit more carefully about this, because if I move my cavalry in like I did before and opt not to bonus charge attack, I'm leaving my cavalry in range of this musket. Now muskets are not great against cavalry, you know, they're a moving target and the muskets were pretty rubbish, but it's a 9+. This tree hex won't affect it won't give me a defense because it's not in the same, it's not in direct line between us, not in the same row of hexes, so you know, we're saying that he can see enough around the side to get him. So it's still a 9, still a risk, isn't it? Still a risk. So I'm not going to do that, I don't think. I think what I'm going to do now is just push my pike unit there with a move, and he is going to do a bonus charge attack on this cavalry, which is going to be a tougher one than before, because yes, it's a 7+ on the cavalry, but he's now in the trees, isn't he? He's in the trees, and therefore he gets defender in trees +1, so it becomes an 8+ to hit. However, I've got support from this musket unit, which is within range, so it's back to 7. Okay, it's a 7+ to hit, so trickier than the one over there, which was a 5+. Need a 7. Let's see what I get. I've got a 4. Missed it. Okay, he's missed. That leaves him vulnerable both to the muskets anyway, which he would have been anyway, but also to the cavalry itself. These 2 units are adjacent to each other. They are now engaged in battle. Okay, this applies to all units. Whenever 2 units are next to each other, that's it. They cannot move away until the other unit has been destroyed or is demoralized. Okay, you don't get stuck to demoralized units, but you do get stuck to other sorts of units. Just for note, I needed a 7+. If I'd got a 7+ exactly, this cavalry unit would have been demoralized, but it would have remained in the trees because it wouldn't have fled. But on its next turn, it would then have started to flee if it didn't rally. Okay, I've still got backup plans here though, of course. So the next thing I can do is I could charge my cavalry into there, but again, for similar reason, or do I do that now? Actually, I can probably do that now, because I think muskets, if he attacks, he does prefer to shoot a pike, so he will shoot the pike before the cavalry. In fact, he'll shoot the nearest unit, of course, so he'll shoot that unit before this unit. So I can do that. Let's push the cavalry up. Let's charge into there. He's going to do a bonus charge attack as well. That's an 8. Cavalry on cavalry is 8. It's 9 because he's in the trees. So 9+, but back to 8+ because I've got support here, and then back to 7+ because I've got this guy here. Okay, so I need a 7+ again. This time my cavalry attacking, and I've got an 11 again. So he goes back 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and again he's off, and he has routed. That means my musket can't shoot now. He's out of range of anything. And that just leaves my cannon, who can, of course, so he can attack. But remember, he has to attack the first unit, but that's okay, because that's what I would do anyway. And it's a basic 8 to hit. There are no trees. So we'll see what he gets. He gets a 6, which is a miss. He's missed. And that's the end of my turn. So let's move back to the AI, and we'll do one, and we'll start to speed up a little bit now. I think I've covered most of the rules. Might be the odd one, but let's keep going. So cannon first, remember, it says attack the nearest unit in the same column. That's him. So he will attack this musket, and he's attacking from higher ground. So 8+ becomes 7+, but it is through trees, so it becomes 8+ again. So he needs a basic 8, and he gets 9. He gets 9. Okay, so in the same way, the hit means my muskets are demoralized. Okay, they've lost morale. And they needed an 8 and they got a 9, which means my muskets retreat or flee by 1 hex. Fortunately, they didn't get a 10, because that would have pushed me off the board, and that would have been muskets gone. Okay, permanently. I've now got to think about rallying that on my next turn, which should be possible. I should be able to do that, but what it means is, you know, they've wasted a turn, it slows me down. It means I have to allocate a 6 to this dice, because it's only a 6 little rally, remember, on the orders chart. So hopefully I'll get a 6. If I do, I've got to use it. I can't use it to attack. I could let him just run off the board, of course, but I don't. At this stage, I don't really want to lose a unit. So his cannons fires and has had a good shot. So then we go to these muskets, because the cavalry have gone. So we start with this musket furthest down. He will do this, attack the nearest unit in range, which is these pikes here. So he'll attack this, it's the nearest unit. Remember, it doesn't matter which unit. They always attack. Actually, I should explain that a bit more. It says attack the nearest unit in range, preferring muskets, pike, cavalry, cannon, and so on. So what it means is it will always attack the nearest unit in range. A musket, yeah, that's the first thing. So if there is one unit which is nearest in range, it will attack that regardless of what it is. Only if there are 2 units equidistant away do you then need to say what do they prefer. And then you can see here they prefer muskets over pikes, over cavalry, over cannon. So in fact they would still shoot the pikes. Let's put him back. So he's shooting him. Muskets on pikemen is a basic 8+. And there are no modifiers, there's no higher ground, there are no supporting units. Always just watch out for the cannons, because they can support. So if he was here, he would support that attack. No trees in the way or in this hex here. So that's a basic 8+ for them. So let's see what they get. And they've got a 5. They've missed, which is good for us. Over here, the musket unit here can't attack, so we roll for him. He gets a 4, and we'll move towards the nearest unit. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're equidistant away, so we must decide the unit first. So I'm going to do odd even. It's even, so he's going to move towards the cavalry, and he prefers horizontal moves. So he will move over there onto X20, from there over onto X22 there in the corner, because that takes him nearer to the cavalry and moves him horizontal. He would have moved vertically if necessary, and if he couldn't move there, because it still takes him nearer, but he prefers horizontal, so he's going to go there. Okay, finally the musketeer at the back gets a 1, so he stays where he is. Pikes, we're going to go, they're all in the same row, so we're going to go left to right. This guy, because he can't attack and he can't move next to somebody, he's going to get a 4. For a pike, that means he's going to move 1 hex towards the nearest cavalry. So for him, it's this cavalry. Remember, he prefers horizontal moves, so he'll go there, which he has to do anyway, because he can't go vertically onto that one, so he'll move there. This pike gets a 3, and that says move 1 hex towards the nearest cavalry. Again, obviously, yeah, so he's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he's got a choice. They're exactly the same. So again, we Roll a dice. And again, we don't take into account whether he can move nearer to them at this stage, or where any units are, or where's the best terrain, or anything like that. Nothing. It's all irrelevant. All we've got to do is choose this randomly. So odds and evens. It's an even. So he's over there. So again, he will move horizontally towards that cavalry. And finally, this pike here gets a 5, so he will move 1 hex towards the nearest pike unit, which for him is this one, and again horizontal moves preferred, so he will go there. Okay, and as is often the case, you will find that AI does tend to use its pikes fairly well to protect. It's got a nice shield of pikes across, almost like pawns on a chessboard, protecting those units behind it. And that's why it'd be nice to get this musketeer out of the way before this pike gets too involved in things. That's the end of its turn, so you can see how that's speeding up a bit. Remember to do the turn tracker, because turns are crucial in this game, so we move that to turn 3. And I now take my 3rd turn. I've still got all 7 units. Okay, so note, I am rolling a die for this demoralised unit. It's the number of units on the board. There are 7, so I take 7 dice. And I need a 6 to rally. Okay, 6 is the only thing that rallies. And of course, you can re-roll 4 6s if you need to. For example, if I hadn't got any 6s there, I've got loads of 4s, look. So I could have re-rolled 2, 3, or 4 of those 4s to try and get a 6. So again, that's something you need to weigh up against what you're trying to do elsewhere. Sometimes, later in the battle, sometimes you'll have a unit which has, been fleeing, and gets down to, and it's going to flee off the board, but because it's so far now from the action, which is perhaps up here, that it's not going to get back in the game anyway, so you just let it go because you want to use the 6 to attack somewhere else. It's one of those. It's another decision you've got to make in this game. So obviously here I've got loads of attacks, and I've got 6 attacks and a move. Well, I'm going to use that 6 to rally this musketeer, so I can't re-roll that 6. I don't need to, because I've got these 4s to choose from. I'm not going to need all those attacks, certainly. Let's see what's going on. I'd like to run... would I like to run that? I could run the pikes into the musketeers. That's a 7+, I think. That'd be quite handy, actually. Yeah, I think I'm going to run the pikes into them. And my other attack, of course, like 6 attack with a 6, I can use on my cannon. So I'm actually going to re-roll all these 4s, knowing that I'm almost certainly not going to get 4 moves, but that's what I'd like. And it's given me 3, so it's been fairly kind to me. You see, again, you can see how that mitigation factor, that leadership ability works. I managed to turn a load of attack rolls into some more useful move rolls. Not perfect, but it's helped. I really need to get this musketeer moving up, and I've got to decide who I'm not going to move. I'm probably not him this turn, so I'll give him an attack. Okay, that's probably going to do for me. I might not be playing this game perfectly in terms of tactics, because obviously I'd probably spend a bit more time thinking about it if I wasn't on the camera. I'm going to take that 5 straight off because he can't attack, and therefore I can just tidy up by removing that. I'm also going to take this 6 off, and I'm going to rally my musket. That's all he can do this turn. Can't do anything else. He can support now. Now that I've rallied him, he could support an attack by somebody else, but obviously there are no units in range to do that. But you can do that. But other than that, obviously his order was rally, and that's it. Next turn, he gets to act normally. Then I am going to... What am I going to do? Am I going to shoot with a cannon first? Probably doesn't make any difference here. See, there's something else you have to think about, is the order you fire in. Because if there was a couple of units here, you'd want to attack with a pike first, because if you killed the unit, then the cannon could shoot the second unit. Whereas if you attack the first unit with a cannon and it kills it, the pike then can't reach the second unit. So you get the point. You've got to be careful about what you're doing. So I'm going to push this pike up, and he's going to run into this musketeer unit, and I say he's going to attack them with a 7 or on a 7+. He's got the support of the cannon, so it's actually a 6, so it's not a bad chance. He's got a 9, which pushes him back 3 hexes, 1, 2, 3, and he's gone. So he has routed. So the cannon actually can't fire now anyway, because there's nobody left in his column. So that's him done. Over here, it's tempting to run the cavalry into the muskets, because cavalry on muskets is a 6+, and it's really good to do that. But then the pike will attack my cavalry next turn, because that's one of their mandatory instructions, and they'll attack on a 7+. Having said that, my cavalry would have plenty of time to recover their morale. The chances of being knocked off the board are slim. They've got time to get back into the game if that happens. I need to clear the units. I'm probably going to do that. Let's move this musketeer unit up first, and then let's do this charge. So he's going to charge into there. Okay. Remember, you get stuck as soon as you move next to an enemy unit. So if that pike unit was there, he would be protecting that musketeer unit, because as soon as I move there, I'd have to stop, and then I could, if I want, do a bonus charge attack on them. So do watch out for that. But he's got clear run. He can run into there, and I can choose which one of those units I'm going to bonus attack. But considering that's a 9+ and that's a 6+, I'm going to take the musketeers. I've got no support, so it's a basic 6+. I've got an 11, and that takes him away and he routs. So this pike then is going to now it's fairly safe to move up. I'm going to push him that way slightly, heading for that tree hex. That's my turn. So AI, the cannon will shoot at my newly recovered musketeers, and again it's going to be a basic 8 because he gets 1 advantage from the higher ground, but he loses 1 from going through the trees. So it's a standard 8 to hit, and he gets a 9. So my poor musketeers have now been pushed back a hex, takes them off the board, and I've lost my first unit. That's a shame, because not only do I lose the unit, obviously I lose one die to roll. So when I'm rolling next time, it'll be 6. It becomes harder to get the right orders. It becomes harder to rally troops the fewer dice you're rolling. So losing units early in battles is often fatal. I wouldn't say this is early. I mean on sort of turn 1, if they've got cannons and they get a couple of lucky hits on you, it does make life particularly difficult. Not impossible, but it does make life difficult. I found this game is far less swingy than perhaps one or two of my others. It doesn't depend on 1 die roll here and 1 die roll there. It tends to be a more gradual, moving feast. You get a feel for how you're doing. I'm feeling at the moment I'm doing pretty well, actually. I've had some good attacks on these. I had a couple of lucky 11s, which has cleared units which may otherwise have hung around a bit longer and may have rallied. So I'm doing all right. That is the end of my turn, wasn't it? I think. Oh no, sorry, it wasn't. We're doing the AI, aren't we? He should take my cannon off, hasn't he? He should take my cannon off. So then we've got the musket. He can't reach anyone, so he'll roll a 4. So he will move nearer to the nearest unit, which is this cavalry. So he will move there, which is not the best for me because he's now in range, or has my cavalry in range, and I can't get to him because this pike unit is engaging me in battle. I'm going to struggle to get out of that, because I'm hitting on a 9 and he's hitting on a 7, so that's going to be tricky. Probably need to try and get this guy up in support at least. Then there are 3 pikes again. They're all on the same row. This one will do one of its mandatory. It says attack an adjacent unit. We can't do that, but then its second instruction is move adjacent to and charge attack a unit. Okay, so again, you do this in the order on here. So the first thing to do is find all the units that he could charge attack. And the answer to that is, because they can only move 1 hex, there is only 1, which is this. So it's going to be this unit here. If there were more than 1, you would then consult the preference chart. Okay, so if, for example, that was there or even there or whatever, you would then, you can charge attack both. You can move there and charge. I'm not explaining this very well. He has an option when he does. He can charge attack. He has to choose one, but he could choose either that one or that one. So at that point, you would have to decide what to do. I can't remember where he was now. Silly me. Is he down here somewhere? He was there, wasn't he? So he will. No, he was further back. He's going to charge attack into this unit here. So we know it's going to be him. So what you do here is there's no reference here to horizontal or vertical moves. Note, and the same for cavalry on their attempts to bonus charge attack people. So what you do is simply find the hexes that he could move to, and again you take no account of terrain. One of these could be a tree or higher ground. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about it. Don't do that. You just find the hexes that he could possibly move to do this. 1, 2. Obviously for cavalry. So for example, if this cavalry unit were here and this pike wasn't, then he could move potentially to a couple of hexes as well. So again, you've got to find the one that the ones that he could move to. You do the same. All right. Put him back. Let's put him back before I forget everything. So you can move there or there. Anyway, going back to it. So all we do is decide randomly again. Yeah, odd, even. I've rolled an odd number, so he will go there. And he will charge always. Remember, they could opt, under the rules they could opt not to, but they never will. They will always bonus charge attack, so he will do that. And pike on pike is an 8+. There is no support. If his cannon was there, that would support, but it's not. So he needs an 8+ to hit, and he gets a 9. Okay, he gets a 9. Remember, what that's going to do is demoralize my pike and push him back 1 hex to there. Okay, this pike unit can't attack and he can't get adjacent, so he'll roll. He gets a 6. It says move 1 hex towards the nearest pike. So for him, that's this unit. So he will move 1 hex. He prefers on this occasion horizontal moves, so he'll go there rather than there. Okay, horizontally rather than vertically. Last pike is that one. He is adjacent, so he will attack. Attack an adjacent unit. That's his first instruction, so he'll always do that. And he's attacking pikemen on cavalry is a 7+, unfortunately for me, and he's got support from this musket here, making it a 6+. So we're really praying for. We don't want anything stupidly high. We're probably going to get hit here. It's a 7. All right, that could be worse. Couldn't it? It was a 6. It got a 7, so that's going to demoralize my cavalry and push them back just 1 hex. Fortunately, okay, just 1 hex. Problem for me now, of course. Well, that's the end of the AI turn. And let's move the turn tracker on before I forget. Okay, my go. So the problem for me now is I have only 6 dice. Okay, I've lost a die because I lost a unit. Okay, I've still got 6 though. You'd think I'd still roll a 6 with 6 die. Well, chances are you probably would. However, I have 2 demoralized units. So I really need 2 6s to keep them both in the game. And certainly if this pike unit, if I don't rally him this time, and he flees back 2 hexes to here, he's kind of getting a bit far away from the action, considering how many turns there are. Remember, pikes can only move 1 hex at a time, so in 5 or 6 turns, he's struggling to get back anywhere meaningful. So got to think about that. Cavalry, a bit more flexible, moving 2. They can then get back into the action in a couple of turns usually. But ideally, I want a couple of 6s, keep them both in the game. There we go. Look at that. So we've got 4 attacks and 2 moves, and luckily a couple of those attacks are 6s, which means they are also rallies, so I can allocate straight away those 2 6s. Don't have to. I could have a cannon attacking or something and just allocate something else to him. So you still got to allocate a dice to each unit, but if you don't allocate a 6 to a demoralized unit, all they will do is flee 2 hexes back down their column, or up in the case of the AI. And when they run off the map or into a river, because there are a couple of maps later on that have rivers on, if they run into a river hex, again, they will rout and leave the battlefield at that point. So anyway, I'm going to do that because I want to keep them in the game. I'm trying to be quiet there because of just thinking about that cavalry unit. Because if I leave him there, when the AI moves, these 2 pike are going to both want to attack him, aren't they? Yes, they are. In fact, they are going to attack him on their mandatory move, second move. They can't attack, but they will move adjacent and charge attack him. So what I'm actually going to do is not rally him. So that's quite good, actually, because it gives you a chance to see the kind of decisions that crop up you're not always expecting, and maybe don't think about sometimes, but that got to be careful. So actually, I'm not going to allocate. I'm not going to rally him. I'm going to let him come away because I'm worried because they could both do that. Although I could tie one of them up with him, he will still do it. 7+, 8, 9, 10, 11. You need 11 to get rid of him, though. Oh, take the risk. I'll take the risk. But sometimes it may be wise not to do that. But I'm going to rally him anyway, thinking about it. On balance, I'm going to rally him. Okay, he's going to move. There's nothing I can re-roll. Considering I want to keep both those 6s, the rest are all different. So I'm kind of stuck. I'd really like to have moved this guy, because again, he's going to attack. You're going to have to move the cavalry out of the way. I'm going to end up losing this. I'm not careful, which would be embarrassing. And these will have to have attack orders, even though they can't attack. So having been extremely confident in this battle, I'm now beginning to feel that I'm less so. Let's see how it works. So the first thing I'm going to do is rally these 2 units that I've put the rally order on. So that at least brings me back a good couple of healthy units, and that already feels better, to be honest. He can't attack, so there's no point. He can't attack. I really wanted to move him probably here to help out, but I couldn't. I need to move him because otherwise he will charge attack him. So I'm going to move him. Either charge him. If I charge him, I'm attacking on 9+. You see, he would attack me back on an 8 because I'm in the trees. But I've got still. I feel I have time. I'm going to take him round to there. And this pike is going to go there because I want to tie this pike up so that he can't attack this cavalry. So I'm going to charge into him and do a bonus charge attack for 8. 8+ with no support. So it's basically an 8+. And I've got a 7, which is a close miss. Okay, that's me done. That's me done. And I just need them. If they get a lucky blow, I'm in trouble here. This, for example, if this cannon takes out my cavalry, this cannon will shoot this cavalry, will attack this cavalry. It attacks on a 9+. And it's on higher ground, which means it's an 8+. But he's in the trees, which means it's a 9+ again. So 9+. There's only about a 27% chance. He'll probably miss, won't he? Yes, he's got 4. He's missed. That's good for me. This musket can attack because there is a unit in range, so he will attack my pike unit. Not sure I took that into account particularly, but never mind. I had to tie this pike unit up really. So he will attack him. It's a basic 8. He gets an advantage from the hill, but again loses it because I'm in the trees. So still 8, but these pikes are supporting because they of course are adjacent, so could attack. So it's back down to 7. Okay, so 8 plus 1 for the trees is 9, but they get support, which is 8, and hills bonus, which is 7+. Oh, they've got an 11. That's dreadful. It really is dreadful. So my pike unit is demoralized, and they needed 7, they got 11. So he goes 1, 2, 3, 4. He's still there. So presumably he's got back here and he's seen, the leader. He's seen the Earl of Essex, stood here, going, get in there, mate, get back. What are you doing? He's going to rally. He's going to. So this is an example of, is there any point in him rallying? Because by then he'll have sort of 5 turns or something to get back into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He can only just get back to the action. So anyway, we'll deal with that when we get there. That's a shame. That's with their pikes. So their pikes, then he will move and attack this because that's, remember, his mandatory order is to attack an adjacent unit. Can't do that. Then move adjacent to and charge attack a unit, which is this one. And again, you simply find the hexes he could move into and then decide randomly. You don't say, oh, this is a tree hex, let's go there. There are too many other considerations. Sometimes it'll be best for the AI to move there because they might be supporting another attack or have cannon protection or whatever it might be. So there's no point in trying to produce. I could produce an AI that does that, but it'll be pages and pages long and no one wants that. So odds, evens, I'm going to say. He gets even, so he goes there and he bonus charges my pike for an 8+. With no support, he gets a 9. Oh my word. This is going horribly wrong. So he retreats by 1 hex and is demoralized. Ooh, I'm losing. I'm just glad all their cavalry is gone because I'm losing all my pikes to protect anyone against them, but they're gone. So that's not so bad as it could have been. Wow. This pike unit now, of course, the one I wanted to tie up in battle, is now free because their muskets destroyed my pikes, more or less. So he will now move adjacent to this cavalry. There is only 1 hex he can move to that's adjacent, which is there. So he will go there and he will bonus attack them. And that will be a 7+ with no support. And he gets a 3. Woohoo! He's missed. But then this guy will do the same. He will also move adjacent because he can. There's only one hex he can go to, so he'll go there. And he will bonus charge him for a 7+, but this time he has got support for a 6+. And he gets a 6, which means I don't retreat, but I am demoralised. And there's a theme going on here, isn't there? Look, 1, 2, 3 demoralised units. Did I say at the start that I usually win this battle? Sure I did. The AI wasn't listening, apparently. That's the end of their turn. We go to turn 5. I've still got 6 turns left. I can still turn this round. I've got 6 units on the board. Plenty of time, plenty of units, but I do need, well, a couple of 6 of it. I'm not so bothered about him. He's going probably, but whatever. Let's see what we get. We've got 2 6s there. That's good news. I can't rally everyone unless I re-roll the 4s trying to get another 6, but to be honest, I'm not sure I want to do that. Or do I want him to stay there? So I've got that conundrum again, haven't I? Would I rather have him retreat to there and then rally him next time, because then the pikes can't reach him? Because if he rallies there, they're just going to do the same. Well, they'll both this time be attacking on a 6+ because they're supporting each other. So he's not going to survive 2 6+ hits, is he? And the chances are he could be. Yeah, okay, makes sense. I'm going to rally him, and I'm going to possibly rally him. Let's leave him there for a minute. I want the cannon to attack this turn. I think I want the musket to attack as well. And therefore, oh yeah, and he could, I'll think what to do with him, and he can have that. Okay, so let's remember I can activate mine in any order, so I'm going to activate him first. He's got a 4, which is no good to him because all he can do is rally. He failed to rally, so he will retreat by 2. He did rally, so he refreshes. He rallied as well, so this pike unit comes back, and saying he might not be useful. Well, if they keep pushing me back, he's probably going to be useful. You know, by now I'm usually fighting this battle up in the hills, and we're getting towards the end, to be honest. Well, maybe not quite this early, but never been pushed this far back, I don't think, particularly on this flank. This cavalry unit had a 4. He's going to attack this pike unit. He's the only one he can attack. He's going to attack this pike unit for a basic 8. Again, with no support. Something else I've not really done very well in this game is use support effectively. Should have tried to get my musketeers next to each other and produced a group of them, but I haven't done that. 8+ on him. I've got an 8. Okay, but he's not going anywhere, but he is at least demoralised, so that's good. I think that's the first time I've demoralised one of their units, isn't it? Most of the others, everything I've just wiped them off the board, haven't I, straight away? So at least we can see how their rally orders work. Good, that's helpful. Let's do the cannon fire on him. It's a basic 8. There are no trees, and again there's no support. Do I want to support him with that cavalry? I think I'm getting to the stage where I do, so let's put that back for a second. I'm going to charge the cavalry, and plus I can get the cavalry off the cannons column, which would be helpful. I'm going to charge him into there and do a bonus charge attack on this pike, which is a 9+ for cavalry, but I have got support from this cannon, so it's an 8+. Oh, I've got a 10. Wow, nice. So he's demoralised, and then I needed an 8. It was a 10, so he goes back 2 hexes. I'm pushing them back on this side. There's a bit of a mismatch, isn't there? Some success here and less so over here. Still got the cavalry, the cannon, so he's going to shoot at this guy. Okay, so cannons on pikes, 8+. Yeah, cannons on pikes, 8+. No trees or anything in the way. It doesn't matter if he's on higher ground. However, remember, defending unit is demoralised, -1. Yeah, he's demoralised, right? So the simple crack of cannon fire behind him might be enough to rout him off the board. Let's see. So it's an 8. It's reduced to 7 because he's demoralised. So I need a 7, and I got a 5. So I missed. That's a shame, because if you hit a demoralised unit, they rout immediately, or wherever they are on the board, and how whatever hit you get. So for example, if I'd rolled a 7, which is what I needed, he wouldn't normally have fled any further because I got exactly the 7. But also I can't make him demoralised because he's already demoralised. He's already demoralised, and therefore he would flee regardless. Okay, so that's Again, tells, I think it's the key rules are on here. Look, demoralised units which are hit again are removed from the game. Yep, says it there, black and white. But I missed, so he stays there. And that's the end of my turn. So we move on to the AI's turn. Again, here we go again. Cannon. Okay, this time the cannon can't fire because there is nobody in his column. Then it says, if at all possible, move to an adjacent hex which tops a column with an enemy unit in it. If so, end. So he's then, what do you do then? Remember, you can only move along his top column. So we look there and we look there, and we say, do either of those columns have enemy units in them? And the answer is yes. One does and one doesn't. So he will move there. Okay, if they both did, again, you roll randomly and he moves randomly. If he couldn't move one way, then he wouldn't move that way, but he, if he couldn't move that way, he'd always move that way anyway, even if there were units there. That's why it says, if at all possible. So his main aim is to get into a column with enemy units in it. If he has a choice, you roll a dice. Otherwise, you just move him straight to that column. So he does that. He doesn't fire or anything because he's moved. That's his order, but he has moved. And now at least I've got 3 units there. Next time I've got to think, right, should I be moving them out of the way of that cannon fire, which... saying that out loud just sounds a bit ludicrous, really. Yes, is probably the answer, isn't it? Musket unit over here can't attack anyone, so you roll a dice. He gets a 1 and stays where he is, which kind of twin-edged sword. I don't really want him in the battle, but then I'm gonna have to get rid of him. I'm gonna find him. Have I got time to do that? I don't know. Time's pressing. I'm halfway through this game already. Okay, pikes. So the one furthest forward is this one. Now, he is demoralised, so all he can do is what it says at the bottom of this chart here. It says a roll of 5 or 6 will rally a demoralised unit, and its activation will end. Otherwise, it will flee, right, by 2 hexes, like like my units do. So slightly different for the AI, because they only get to roll 1 die per unit. Then if they get a 5 or 6, they will rally. Okay, I know it's a 6 for the player, but obviously, generally the player is rolling 4, 5, 6, 7 dice, so is far more likely to get a 6. So they need a 5 or 6. He gets a 6. Of course he does. It's just the way this battle's going. So he rallies. So he's back in the match. Next, this pike unit. See what he does. He gets a 5. Move 1 hex towards the nearest pike. Well, the nearest pike for him is down here. He can't move horizontally as he prefers, so he'll move vertically down there. And this pike will also try and rally. He gets a 2 and fails, so moves 2 hexes back towards his own end, 1, 2, and he has therefore routed. Okay, and that's the end of turn 5. We're halfway through the battle exactly. Obviously, it'll be much quicker the second half because I'm not explaining it, and there are fewer units on the board. But again, I'm starting to feel okay. I've only lost 1, they've lost 5. My main concern now is just getting back. I've been pushed back so far. I've now got to try and get back into the battle, and that's a bit of a pain, really. I've got to do. Let's try. Here we go. We need moves, don't we? We need moves. Here's 6 dice, and I've got 3 moves, and I've got some attacks, and it's almost a shame, really, because the only thing I can re-roll are these 6s, but I really need a 6, because I think this time he has to rally, otherwise he's going to rout, because he'll be off the board. There's only 1 hex left, and he's gone. So I can't re-roll any attacks. So I've only got 3 moves. So who's the most efficient? Who's going to move? He's going to move, so I need to get rid of that cannon. He's going to move. Actually, the cannon's going to fire. He can battle it out with the cannon. And he can fire and he can move. Actually, that's pretty good. Worked out pretty well, to be honest. It's worked out pretty well. So first thing I'm going to do is rally my cavalry back to full morale. So again, Earl of Essex, giving it the old, your head's coming off, mate. Get back in there. So he goes back. He's going to move up there. He is going to shoot, and I'm going to attack this pike because he is in danger of attacking my cavalry again. So he's going to attack him with an 8 basic and no support. I got a 4. That is one I really, really could have done with, to be honest. Really could have done with that. Then I'm going to run my cavalry up there. So there, or there if you prefer, to get him out the line of the cannon, but also ready to attack that cannon very soon, because I need to get rid of that. Well, I need to get rid of everyone, but I need to get rid of that, and then I can come round to the musket with my cavalry, and then kind of come around the back, hopefully. The pike needs to move up. He's going to go into the trees, and my cannon is going to shoot at his cannon. It's a basic 8. Doesn't matter, he's on high ground, doesn't matter, I'm in trees, not this way. 8+. I've got an 8. It's a shame it's an 8, really, but never mind, it's better than nothing, isn't it? So he won't flee, unfortunately. Won't rout, but he will be demoralised. That's the end of my turn. So they go back. At least you can see the cannon now won't shoot me because he's demoralised. All he can do is try and rally, and he fails to rally. So he flees the battlefield and he goes into the Hall of Fame at the top there. Next, their muskets. He is going to get a 4, which means he'll move towards the nearest unit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is actually, though, that cavalry. So he goes straight along that line of hexes towards him. Prefers horizontal moves anyway, but that takes him nearer, so he'll go that way, yes. And the pikes, this pike will move directly towards the cavalry, remember, always, if it can, it will always charge attack, bonus charge attack. It's a 7+. It's got a 7. Ah, ew, frustrating. My cavalry just cannot get themselves together, can they? Cannot get themselves together. They have a weak mental element in there somewhere, unfortunately. He is now demoralised, but didn't flee because they scored exactly what they needed. And then the other pike unit can't move adjacent, can't attack, can't move adjacent, so we roll, and he's going to move 1 hex towards the nearest cavalry. That's all we need, but he prefers horizontal moves, so he will actually move in there, which is probably better for us on this occasion. Otherwise he would be coming down the side and potentially attacking as well. So they're almost kind of queuing up now to attack. That's the end of their turn. We're on to turn 7. Still feels in the balance to me. Still feels in the balance, not sure. To be honest, not sure. I've got 6 dice. Okay, we've got lots of attacks, a couple of moves. I definitely want my cavalry to move because he's going to have to, he's the main guy to get rid of this musket. He's just going to have to charge at them. They'll get a shot on him. Hopefully it'll miss, and then I'll be on him. You know, that's the way it goes. The cannon is kind of out of the game. It's got 4 goes. 1, 2, 3. He's not really much use now. It doesn't really matter what he does. It's a waste of a move in a way if I don't need to. He can actually rally, which is good. He might as well shoot. Probably prefer him to move. Yeah, okay, let's attack with him. I'm going to roll these 2 6s again. So re-roll the 6s. At least I've got 1 move there. Let's try and get him in the battle and say the cannon. Okay, that's that. So I'm going to rally my cavalry yet again. Rally the cavalry. And I'm going to ignore that 6 because the cannon can't fire because there's no one in his column. This guy is going to run onto the higher ground. So at least he won't get that bonus when he shoots at him. I know he's going to shoot at him, but the turn after I will then be able to charge into him. And that is one of the key actions for this battle. I'm going to play that out over the next turn or 2. This pike is going to move forward. It's got to come round and help out. This pike's going to come over there. And he is going to shoot, and he's going to shoot this pike here, which is a basic 8, but he has got support here, so 7+. Come on, need this. Oh, it's a 6. That was tight. It was 6. Okay, back to the AI, so he will shoot at my cavalry. It's muskets on cavalry is a 9. Okay, there's a 9. And there are no modifiers there. This has to be a miss. It should be a miss. Crikey, I thought it was there. 7, he's missed. Woo. This pike unit goes first because he's furthest down the map, and he will attack a unit because it's adjacent. He will attack this cavalry, and it needs a 7+. No support. Oh, he's got a 10, and that has eventually destroyed my cavalry. At least destroyed their morale, and they have fled. They've gone home. Yeah, gone home to their wife and kids. Final one here, then this final pike here rolls. He gets a 6, and he will move 1 hex towards the nearest pike. That's him, and the only way he can get nearer is to go there, but he does prefer horizontal moves anyway, so that's fine. So he goes there. That's the end of their turn. We move the turn tracker on. We have 3 turns left. Can we do it? We're down to 5 units. Actually, I'll put my cavalry down here because we want to put them in the Hall of Fame, don't we? 5 dice. We've got 5 units left. Oh, not sure that's what I wanted, is it? Or maybe it is. Is it? 5 moves? Okay, well, moves are okay for some of them. I don't really care about the cannon. Well, yeah, he wanted a move, that's for sure. I guess, yeah, he wanted a move as well. Okay, yeah, so what I really want to do then is just re-roll the 2s, because I do want an attack, really. And I managed to get one. That's good. So he gets a move and he gets an attack. Perfect. So what let's save the what could be the crucial bit until then. So what I'm going to do then is charge this pike right into there. Bang. He can charge attack one of them, but he's now supporting attacks on either or. So he's going to charge attack this one here. And that will be an 8 reduced because of this support to a 7. Come on. Oh, it's a 3. He's missed. Okay, let's move. Do you know what? I'm actually going to move him up there into range of this, in the range of this musket, because if he does, and I'm going to charge him anyway, but if I, no, actually it makes no difference, forget that. I'm going to do it anyway. He's going to charge there, or move there I should say. Now this musket is going to shoot, so he's going to shoot this unit as well, because he's nearer for this one to get to. So he's going to shoot this unit. Basic 8 with a bonus here, which is a 7 plus then. Same as it was before, same for the pike, wasn't it? The pike attacked on 8 with a yeah, 7 plus. And this time I got an 8. Okay, this time I got an 8. So the good news is he's demoralized and he moves back 1 hex. Bad news is he's still on the board, but he did move back. But remember, to win, I have to remove or demoralize them. So if I can demoralize them all, I'll win. That's him done. Cannon, not really bothered about. He might as well move that way, I suppose. Now this is crucial. The cavalry is going to charge 1, 2 hexes into the muskets, and the cavalry on muskets is a 6 plus. There's no support. I really need this. It's a double 6. Get it makes up for some slightly dodgy rolls a minute ago, doesn't it? Always balances out, doesn't it? Dice rolls, I think so. Needed a 6, got a 12. He goes back 6 hexes and he is well on his way home. Whew, that's the end of my turn. AI's turn. This guy goes first because he's further down the map. He is adjacent, so he will attack. It's an 8 plus to attack this guy. No support for him, and he misses. This guy needs to try and rally. He gets a 2, so he fails, so he goes 1, 2. And the turn moves on to 9. I have 5 dice. And I roll them to get 2 moves and 3 attacks. Okay, he can't reach that pike yet, but he might as well keep moving towards him if he can. He's going to run into that one. He's going to attack. He's going to attack. Doesn't matter about him. That'll do. Don't need to re-roll any of that. So we'll take the cannon's attack off because he can't do anything with that. So this pike, this is maybe not a point that's particularly come up yet. You know, when you do a bonus charge attack, when you only get that attack obviously when you first charge. You know, you move adjacent to someone, you then get to do that bonus charge attack. In future turns, when you're adjacent to someone, you don't. It's not an automatic attack at all. You have to allocate them with an attack die. That's probably been exemplified somewhere in this video. I'm not sure, but that that's the case. So just to make that clear, he's starting adjacent to him, so the only way he can attack is to issue him with an attack order. You've seen in this video, it's not usually a problem getting the right orders, more or less. Sometimes there'll be some decisions to be made, but it's not going to be too frustrating. So this pike will attack him first. No, of course not. The most efficient thing to do is to have this guy move adjacent, isn't it? And do a bonus charge attack on him. That would be an 8, but he gets support from him for a 7 and him for a 6. 6 plus. And we've got a 5. He's missed. Okay, don't worry, we've still got plenty of chances left. Let's move this cavalry first on its way over to the pike. So next up is this pike. So he's going to attack, and now of course he's got that support. So he's attacking for an 8, 7, 6 again. So again we need a 6 plus. And this time we get a 7. So that unit becomes demoralized and it flees back 1 hex. Note that adjacent units do not prevent units from fleeing. Okay, once they're fleeing, they just run through and past everyone. If a fleeing unit, because it's not something that actually came up on the example, is it? But if let's say I had a unit that was here that was fleeing, so if he had to flee 2 hexes, he would go 1, 2. He lands on there. If you do that, then he would then just simply keep fleeing by 1 hex until he finds an empty hex. And again, if that takes them off the board or into a river, they would rout and disappear. So I don't need my musketeer. Do you know what? Let's just do it anyway. He could attack him. I've actually won because I've already demoralised everyone on the board. But if I want to just do it, you can attack him for a basic 8, 7, 6 because he's demoralised, and that would of course destroy him, and so on. And I've won on turn 9, and that was looking a bit dodgy at one point, wasn't it? But I managed to pull it out of the bag. Okay, so the first couple of battles are sort of like that. So it should be manageable, particularly after a bit of practice. And then things begin to get a bit different, a bit tougher. You know, some of the terrain has an effect, and rivers can create congestion. And you know, a couple of battles where you say you have to get somebody off the top of the map. You've really got to kind of keep your cavalry safely in reserve, because they're the ones that can really move fast when eventually you manage to create a gap for them. So I like to think the battles, I've worked hard on these 15 battles in terms of play testing and balancing, and I'd like to think they're all pretty finely balanced in terms of usually getting down to the last couple of turns, and building that excitement as you go. But they're long enough to get involved with, but still, when you play these, being reasonably familiar with the rules, then you will find that you can do them in 30 to 40 minutes or so, I would think. Let me see if I can just quickly show you a few other battles. There's Battle of Stow on the Walls there, for example. That's the Battle of Naseby, which is quite a famous one. In the war, that's the one with the river there. Battle of Comerdy Bridge. You see those couple of bridges on there. Battle of Cheriton is there. We've got a first Battle of Newbury, Battle of Lansdowne, Battle of Hopton Heath, Battle of Seacroft Moor, Battle of Edgehill, we just played, haven't we? That's probably that's an older version of that. That's another one of those. Battle of Braddock Down, there's Marston Moor, Second Battle of Newbury. There's all sorts going on there. Okay. And there's plenty of variety in terms of the units you get to use. Sometimes you won't have cannons, sometimes you won't have cavalry, sometimes you have lots of cavalry. So good variety, I think, between the battles. That is available, at the time of making this video, it will be available in hopefully a few days' time, but I'm sure by the time most people watch this video, it will be available. It's generally available on Amazon, on their worldwide sites. Thank you very much. Cheers, guys.